What Happens in the Woods is a true crime podcast. We discuss events that are often violent in nature. Listeners' discretion is advised.
There are cases we look at that leave us wondering, what could that person have done differently and possibly saved their life? Unfortunately, there isn't always an answer to that question. However, the case you are about to hear in this episode is not one of those cases. It is unfortunate that the victim in this episode didn't listen more to the inner voice that was warning her of just how serious her situation was. It was almost as if this person knew that nurturing was never going to be enough, but had to keep trying to fight nature at all costs. We once brought up a question on the nature versus nurture theory, how it related to criminals. Can a person be so inherently evil that they would harm the people who have loved them the most? Can you fault a person for being able to get away with lying, cheating, stealing from a loved one if that loved one allows them to get away with it? We have released several episodes since posing that question, and I don't believe we are any closer to an answer now more than we were then. If anything, we have much more to think about with the information we have learned. Join us this episode as we contemplate a case that touches on the nature versus nurture subject, leaving us again to wonder just what is it that makes a person choose to act a certain way, and why their ends to seeking what they want seem justified. This is True Crime Podcast, What Happens in the Woods, with your hosts, Jess and Bryce. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We managed to pull ourselves together and record an episode. Not on time, not according to schedule, but we've got an episode for you. Hi, Bryce.
Hello.
Why are you confused?
Because it's on time.
No, it's not. Should have been last Friday. And the one before that should have been the Friday before that.
Well, there's a heat wave.
There was a heat wave, and yeah, there's just a lot of things going on at the house lately. We're all just kind of discombobulated. At least I am.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. You just don't seem to have any care.
I care.
Do you?
Yes.
Yeah. What's your update this week?
We're releasing an episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And?
UK still in the lead.
The UK is still in the lead?
Still in the lead.
Who's
UK
after that?
going strong. I don't know. I didn't look. I think it's Australia. I have to look.
Oh, okay. What kind of numbers man are you?
It's not about the numbers. It's about the people.
Statistics.
It's what the fans want.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening anyways, no
Thank
matter
you.
where you're from. No other updates?
No?
All right.
What do you have for me this week?
All right. So this episode, we're going to talk about the murder of Judy Hebert. This was pretty recent, back on March 3rd, 2011. So within like 10 years.
Okay.
So this one's a little bit different than what we usually cover. This isn't like a serial killer case or, person with a violent history. And we're going to go back into their past and know all their secrets or anything.
Yeah.
This one is just ultimately, it comes down to a case of murder that was solved by working the crime scene and, getting good evidence. And there was a lot of inconsistencies from their suspect.
So just good old fashioned detective work.
Yeah, basically very straightforward.
Okay.
It doesn't make it any happier in the retelling, but
Okay.
it's, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't expect true crime for happy endings.
No, but there is I guess the best outcome is a sense of justice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 58-year-old Judy Hebert was a vibrant woman who was living in Pasco, Washington at the time of her death. She was passionate about and had studied horticulture for a long time. She had graduated from college in Spokane, and she was becoming a master gardener, working with gardens in Spokane, and there was someplace else. It was another town in Eastern Washington, but she was, that was her passion.
Right.
She previously had been married for about 30 years, so a long time, to a man named Rolf Hebert. They were divorced. She was living just fine on her own and don't believe that she was dating anybody. She was just living her life and doing what she wanted to do.
Living her best life.
That's right. They had a really good relationship, though, after the divorce. It was very amicable, and they were in constant contact. They described each other as their, each other's best friend.
Yeah.
So they were in frequent contact. They had raised one daughter together, and their daughter, Tashia, was actually Judy's niece. So Judy's twin sister was her birth mother. But pretty early on in Tasha's life, it was agreed that Judy and her husband at the time, Rolf, would adopt Tashia.
Okay.
So Judy was unable to have children, and the couple just kind of thought that this was like, a dream come true for them. This was an answer to something that they had wanted and they were struggling to have. And
it was very serendipitous.
Right. And Rolf has said numerous times in all of his interviews that he's given or when he's discussed this, they didn't look at her any differently. They treated her as their daughter. They loved her unconditionally. They would have done anything for her.
As one would.
Right. So there's contradictory info out there on when she was actually adopted, like at what age.
Yeah.
I've read it was 6 months. I've read that it was 5 years. She was 5 years old when she was actually adopted. So she may have lived with them for a little bit and maybe wasn't officially adopted. Maybe that's where the information is contradictory.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Unfortunately, life with Tashia did not turn out to be a dream. From Tashia's perspective, her home life was erratic. Tashia claims that her birth mother kidnapped her as a child and then dumped her.
Yeah.
And I don't know, dumped her where and at what age. I'm not sure. This is just some information that she's given to people during interviews. She also claims to have endured Judy going through a psychotic break that caused her to become quote unquote mean. And it led to her living with her great grandmother for a time in her mid teenage years. Whether this break actually happened is still up for debate.
Okay.
So according to Rolf, Tashia was a very willful and disrespectful child. She lied about everything, even if it didn't matter. If a glass broke, it was never her. She didn't know about it. She didn't know a damn thing. Her teenage years were filled with her running away and then them calling the police or authorities and her being brought back. And then eventually she was like, yeah, I'm just not coming back. But then she would ask them for financial help.
Okay.
And they would give it to her because that was that was her child. That was their child.
Yeah.
And they didn't want her to suffer in any way.
Yeah.
So they would do what they could to help her. She also constantly, according to him, threw it in their face that they were not her real parents. And she directed most of that towards Judy.
Okay.
For whatever reason. But like I said, she took their support and money when she needed it.
Of course.
Yeah. So we're going to jump forward through a few years and whatever issues within the family. We begin this story particularly in January of 2011 when Tashia and her husband Todd and then Tashia's daughter, who was her child from a previous relationship. She's 7 years old at the time. They move in with Judy. So they were going through some financial issues. I read that Todd lost his job. He might have also possibly been having an affair. There's some wild speculation with some of this stuff. But needless to say, they needed to find a place to stay. Judy was like, okay, you guys can come and stay here. She's probably mostly concerned with her granddaughter. So I'm sure at first things were fine. It's strange having people come and live in your house. It can be difficult, even in the best of times. Doesn't matter if it's family or not. But, when finances are an issue, that adds a lot of complication. And then there was an accident. So on February 20th, 2011, Todd was out in the garage at Judy's residence.
Uh-huh.
He had asked Judy to come out and help him with some measuring so that he could put up a wall. So apparently he was, as a thank you for living there, they hadn't been getting along very well, but he wanted to do something nice for her. He was going to separate her garage and build a little area for her to have like a potting and a planting station, right? So that seems great. She's excited. So she's out there, she's holding the measuring tape, and he's kind of directing her like where to go. And he has her stop directly under these rafters that are coming from her ceiling.
Yeah.
And there's like a basic like plywood floor from these rafters for storage.
Okay.
So a large container holding about 35 pounds of books falls down, hits her, clean clocks her in the head.
Really?
So she fell to the cement floor. It's garage.
Yeah.
And she was pretty badly injured. You got 35 pounds of something forced down directly onto your head and neck.
Yeah.
And then that drops you to the ground.
Yeah. Because that can mess up your spine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. She most likely had a concussion.
Yeah.
It was described in some documents later on that she had contusions around her skull, possibly a fractured skull, but the exact injuries are unclear. There are reports that she was really bruised, that she had maybe some contusions on her face. And I could believe all of that. If you come down hard, your face hits cement, you're going to get probably cut like around your eye area, something like that. There was even a report where Tasha said she was bleeding from her eyes and nose.
Oh, wow.
Right. But from what I can find, she didn't seek medical attention, at least not right away.
Okay.
So this is all kind of speculated. And I can't imagine. She's 58 and mind you, she's probably in really good shape. She does a lot of outdoor stuff. It doesn't really matter your age.
Yeah.
Something like that happens. Yeah. You could really damage yourself.
I'm going to say age also plays into it.
Right. So according to records, Tasha's quickly calling her father after this happens and asking for the code to Judy's safe so that she can get the DNR papers and the will out of it. He basically tells her, get your fucking head straight. Like, why are you on the phone with me? Get off the phone with me and call 911. She says, Mom won't let me. So then he's like, let me talk to Judy. So Judy gets on the phone. She's like, yeah, I don't think I need medical attention. So she's alert.
Yeah.
She's, conscious.
Aware of the conversation.
Right. She's aware of what's going on. She tells him what happened. She's not incapacitated in any way. She just remembers like, yeah, I was standing there and oh my gosh, how weird is that something fell on me?
Yeah.
She kind of plays it off and they, just kind of go on with the day. At some point, she may have sought medical attention. I don't know. I'm going to assume she was probably in a lot of pain and maybe needed to seek some medical attention. But again, I don't know for sure. So at some point, though, she begins to believe that there may have been something more to the accident. She relays to neighbors and her ex-husband that she is suspicious that it wasn't an accident at all.
Mm.
Judy supposedly even comes up with a code word to use if she needs her neighbors to call 911. But she's not able to come out and say it. So this sounds like a woman who's paranoid about her living situation. I mean, if somebody came to me and was like, yeah, I'm suspicious of what's going on in my home and I'm afraid for my safety, I'm not sure that I wouldn't 100% be like, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Like, why do you feel that way? And not maybe play it off as, yeah, that's weird, but I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I guess it would kind of depend upon the situation too.
Yeah.
But I would like to think though, if it did sound suspect, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know about that. You maybe should talk to somebody about that. But in Judy's case, it seems like no one was dismissive of her suspicions. Like everybody took her seriously.
Really?
But nobody did anything. Nobody said anything to any authorities, to investigator, like private investigator.
Yeah.
Filed a report. Talked to anybody. Nothing. So, unfortunately, just a couple weeks later, Judy was shot and killed in her home.
Oh.
Yeah.
That escalated quickly.
It really does. It's like, so February 20th is the accident. March 3rd is when this occurs.
Wow.
So on March 3rd, neighbors reported hearing gunshots coming from Judy's home. This is around 2:20 p.m. There is a 911 call made about that time that is a hang-up call.
Oh.
But they trace it back to Judy's address. About 10 minutes later, an officer shows up at the home where a very, quote, emotional and distraught, end quote, Tasha answers the door. According to the officer, Tasha claims that there was something that exploded on the stovetop that caused the fire alarm to go off. And this created a panic with everybody in the house.
Okay.
So then he's like, well, okay, that's cool. Let me come in and, we can talk about this and I can help you get everybody calmed down.
Yeah.
And she says, okay, that's fine, but I need to put my dogs away. And she shuts the door on him, leaves him on the porch.
Okay.
So the officer's waiting and waiting and waiting. And he walks the perimeter of the house. He speaks to a neighbor, calls in for backup while waiting for Tasha to handle the dogs. This is not a quick, let me put the dogs away.
Yeah.
She finally comes to the door, and as the court documents claim, she says, quote, she came at me with an axe. And then she confesses to shooting her mother.
Well, that changed quickly.
Right. With backup on the scene and paramedics on the way by that time, the police enter the home to find Tasha's daughter, who is 7. She's in a bedroom with the TV up as loud as it will go.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. They go through the house and they find the body of Judy on the floor in the doorway of her bedroom. So pretty much in the doorway of her bedroom and hallway.
Yeah.
There is a file folder near her that she's obviously been holding when she died. There is a hatchet on the floor near her head. It has some blood and some possible tissue on it. There is also the gun that was used to shoot her. It was a .357 Magnum. Mm-hmm. She obviously appears to have been shot. They check her pulse. She does not have one.
Okay.
So the officers back out of the house. The paramedics, come in, pronounce her dead at the scene. Investigators are then called in to start their jobs of collecting evidence and, the questioning.
Yeah.
Tasha is taken down to the police station for an interview, and she's got a story to tell. She definitely does not disappoint with her, version of things.
Yeah.
So apparently the day began with Judy screaming at her about money missing from her bank account. She is accusing Tasha and Todd of stealing from her.
All right.
Now, where's Todd in all this, right? He left about 2 or 3 days before the shooting.
Oh.
Yeah.
He got the money and he was like, I'm out.
So now that Todd was gone, who was going to repay her?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So also, side note, Todd and Tasha separated.
Yeah.
So he will come back into the story a little bit later. But as the day progressed, Tasha claims that Judy was, quote, raging and bitching on and on about the money, whatever else comes up. Yeah. Because of the disruption in the house, she claims that she told her daughter to stay in the bedroom with the TV on as loud as possible so that she wouldn't hear the yelling.
Okay.
Tasha then tells police that she asked Judy to get her birth certificate from out of Judy's safe that was located in the master bedroom closet. So they're arguing about money. She says she's trying to de-escalate the situation. And all of a sudden, this is the best time to find her birth certificate.
Yeah. Mom, could you get my birth ticket?
Right. Because you need it. Why? Is
because they need it. I'm trying to deposit the money and they won't take it.
I'm like, what? Are you being deported? Are you worried about what? What do you need your birth certificate for?
She's trying to open up a bank account with that money she stole.
Right. So Judy goes into the closet, opens the safe, and turns around. She is wielding a hatchet or axe.
Is that what she keeps in the safe?
Right. So she got the hatchet in one hand.
And a birth certificate.
And then she got a file folder in another, and she starts to come at Tasha as if she's going to attack. Tasha evades being hit by this axe or whatever it is, somehow remembers that there's a loaded .357 Magnum in the safe, and she pulls that on Judy. So even though there's now a gun pointed at her, she claims that Judy still keeps coming at Tasha.
This is fucking weird because I guess Judy in the safe, she's like, gun or hatchet?
Right.
Ah, fuck it. I'll take the hatchet.
Let me take the hatchet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't it doesn't make sense. There is now, they're moving somehow like scuffle, I don't know, through the closet, through the bathroom and into the bedroom. And then Judy is shot at 3 times. So at one point, maybe when the first shot was shot or when the first one hit her, the hatchet is dropped from her hand and it goes down and hits her head.
What?
Keep in mind, this is the same woman who just was injured just like 2 weeks prior and was barely mobile. Like she was hurting. She was injured.
Yeah.
But she has enough strength to come at somebody with a hatchet.
Hell yeah.
Right. So Tasha feels like she can only stop her mother from shooting, by shooting her. So 1 shot goes wild, 2 shots manage to hit Judy. One of them going through her thumb as she's clutching that folder. That goes through her heart and lodges into her spine. It most likely killed her instantaneously.
Okay, yeah.
So when asked, Tasha claims she panicked when the police showed up because she thought her mom probably was not badly hurt and would have her arrested. She also thought the police would hurt her dogs.
Okay.
If they came into the house. And I don't know where these dogs went to after this. There's no mention of the dogs ever again, other than she had to put them away. They might not even have been a real dogs.
Yeah.
So all in all, what she's saying is this was self-defense. She's not to blame for anything that occurred that day. And she tried her best to de-escalate the situation. And it ended up like this.
That's one of my de-escalation techniques.
Of course, to shoot somebody.
Can you grab my birth certificate?
Birth certificate. Right. So all of this is a great version of the story, and much of it is not plausible. I'm sorry, it's just not. However, now investigators have to figure out what actually took place on that day. And when we come back from this break, I will get into some of the accounts given by Judy's neighbors, her ex-husband, evidence found at the scene, and not 1, but 2 trials that followed.
2?
Always 2.
Okay.
1's never good enough. We've heard what Tashia Stuart claims to have happened on the day of March 3rd, 2011, when she shot her mother in supposed self-defense. But I want to backtrack a little bit into some things that happened before. So these are things that kind of took place around the time of the accident in February.
Okay.
I mentioned that instead of 911, Tasha had called her father, and, that was after the incident in the garage. She was asking specifically how she could get into Judy's safe.
Yeah.
He told her, stop being stupid, get off the phone.
Yes.
Call 911. And what I didn't mention was that Tasha actually called him 2 other times that day to get the safe code.
Jesus.
He refused to give it to her. He told her that, if you want it so bad, you need to ask mom.
Yeah.
She says, well, mom told me everything in there is mine anyways. And he was like, well, then she'll give you the code if it's yours.
Yeah.
That was kind of the end of that discussion with him. Another thing I wanted to mention was that Tasha supposedly was in contact with the father of her daughter, a gentleman by the name of Charles Adney. And after the accident, she asked him if she paid him $1,000, would he be willing to witness a fake will that would assure that her husband Todd would get nothing from Judy if she were to die.
Huh.
Right. She also apparently added a comment that, quote, that bitch should be dead any day now because, quote, she had dropped something on her head. So if that were to be true, that is her basically confessing to attempted murder.
Yeah.
And mind you, this is not something this is his version of accounts. This is what he relays to authorities.
Yeah.
There's no physical evidence of the conversation, or it's not written down anywhere.
Yeah.
This is his version. So after the tub fell on her head, like I said, Judy began to suspect that Todd or Tasha, maybe both of them, were trying to harm her. She relayed this to 3 separate neighbors, and even, like I said, came up with that safe word.
Uh-huh.
Judy told another neighbor that she believed the couple might have been messing with her medication to confuse her. She also was very concerned with money missing from her bank account.
Of course.
So she contacted a financial advisor, canceled her bank card, reordered another one. She, contacted her financial advisor on investments and stuff, and just trying to make sure that she was protected from any more theft.
Yeah.
She also draws up a new will that cuts her daughter out of everything except for $10,000.
Okay.
So she relayed her suspicions to her ex, Rolf, as well. He, of all people, knew of Tasha's troubled past with Judy, and he knew that she was in financial trouble.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason that she and Todd had to move there. He also knew that Judy would keep doing anything for them because she loved her granddaughter.
Yeah.
So, like I said, nobody had dismissed her fears, but nobody did anything to take steps.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the evidence that shows, what they found, as well as like piecing the events of the day together between the neighbors, the police's, and the ex-husband's accounts.
Okay.
So outside of Tasha's account of how the morning started off, no one is completely sure what happened during that time. I'd highly doubt that there was an argument that started in the morning that went into the time of the shooting. According to her dad, at around noon, Tasha calls him up, asks him, quote, "What do I do if mom comes at me?" He tells her, leave the house and go cool down.
Yeah.
If you're having problems with your mom, you can remove yourself from the situation until you guys can discuss it. Like, stop being an idiot.
That's the most logical thing.
Right. He also reminds her that mom is still injured from the accident a couple weeks prior, and what is she really going to be able to do?
Yeah.
What could she possibly have done? So at this time, he's unaware of any fighting that Tasha describes happening. It's not mentioned. He's unaware that possibly happened that morning.
Okay.
So next, the shots. So the neighbor next door hears shots. He's outside doing, puttering around on his car. He hears shots. It's a very distinctive sound.
Yeah.
He hears the first one. He looks over at the house. He sees the windows pulsating from the second and the third. So he is like, okay, something's going on inside the house.
Yeah.
He goes inside. He calls over to Judy's house immediately. And he's told by Tasha that it just was something that was left on the stove that exploded.
Of course it was.
3 times.
3 times.
He asks to speak to Judy, and he is told that she's in her room asleep and that she can't come to the phone. She doesn't want to be bothered.
Okay.
But something just exploded.
Yeah.
And she's asleep.
She's not awake.
She's not awake.
She's a heavy sleeper.
Right. So this neighbor isn't buying the story. So he goes across the street and he's talking to the other neighbor.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, call over and ask for Judy. See what she says. So Tasha again answers the phone. And when she asks to speak to Judy, Tasha says that Judy is sick and throwing up in the bathroom.
Okay.
And, she also relays like, yeah, something exploded. The fire alarm's going off and mom's sick and throwing up.
Sweet.
So this neighbor is like, well, I would like to talk to her when, have her call me back.
She's
and Tasha's like, yeah, sure. So then we have the 911 call.
Yeah.
I watched a couple of, they were both fairly cheesy, but one was horrendous. I watched a couple of investigation ID shows that had this case and reenactments and stuff.
Okay.
So one of these shows was, there was just blatant inconsistency.
That's my favorite, the reenactment.
I swear to God, like the actors that they chose were like in their 20s. Tasha's 38 at the time of this. It was like this young 20-something couple that were just gorgeous and living their life, and they needed to move back home with Judy. And
the struggles of beautiful people.
Right. And it was very, the inconsistencies were just like the timeline, there was supposedly like a year between the accident and the shooting. It happened within 2 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Like it yeah. And I don't know if they're doing that on purpose, like to protect anybody's privacy. I don't know, but it was hilarious.
Huh.
But the other one that I watched wasn't as bad. The reenactments are sometimes really bad, but they actually played the real 911 call during the reenactment.
That was short because they just hung up.
Well, so there's a little bit more to it.
Okay.
So in it, you can hear some speaking, and it's a woman's voice. You cannot make it out. It's like 2 very short sentences.
Yeah.
And then a shot. And then the line goes dead.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I think that's probably like the most horrifying thing that a dispatcher would hear.
Yeah, a shot.
Is like a screaming child or a shot and then a dead line.
Yeah.
So the dispatcher tries to call back the number because they can do that.
Yeah.
That's the nature of that. So she calls back the number and she's told by a woman that it was a false alarm because the smoke detector had gone off while the batteries were charging and it's freaking everybody out. Everything's good. And again, is hung up on.
Okay.
Right. So, of course, the location where the call is coming from is visible.
Yeah.
And the dispatcher automatically sends out a patrol car. That's just standard procedure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So now the police are at the house. As stated, the officer arrived and Tasha answered the door, frantically claiming the pot had exploded on the stove. Fire alarm's going off. Everybody's freaking out.
Yeah.
Then she shuts the door on him when he asks to come in, and she says she's going to put the dogs away. So in the time that she took to do that, he, like I said, walked around the house.
Yeah.
While outside, he's called over by the neighbor who had heard the shots fired.
Okay.
Can't confirm what was said between the two of them, but after that, the officer then calls for backup and unholsters his gun. Then he proceeds to go back over to the front of the house and wait for her to open the door, which she does, timing it perfectly to when he gets to the door.
Oh, yeah. She wasn't watching.
Right. And that's when she just frantically blurts out, "She came at me with an axe," and then claims to have shot someone in the house. Right.
It's just me and my mom and my daughter here.
Right. But I shot someone.
My mom came at me with an axe.
Right.
I shot someone.
So we know that she's taken in for questioning and, her account of what happened. When asked why she lied to the neighbors when they called that day, and when the 911 dispatcher called back, she claimed she was just trying to get off the phone with them to deal with the smoke alarm, which we know was not happening.
No, yeah.
The continued lie about it is absolutely ridiculous. There's no smoke alarm. You just made up a story, and then you come out and say my mom tried to come at me with an axe.
Yeah, but I was still dealing with a smoke alarm.
But the smoke alarm was real.
So
right,
it was messing me up.
Yeah. And then there were some interesting things found at the house. Seems that Tasha had been obsessed with getting into that safe. She was trying to get the code from other people. So like her dad, and like she tried to observe her mom doing it. She tried to get her mom to give it to her. She decided she was just going to figure out how to get it herself. And she set up a recording camera in the closet.
Oh, wow.
Pointed at the safe so that she could see her mother using the code. There were also searches that they found on her phone going back as far as February about like how to change a code, how to break into a safe, how to get, how to figure out
was
what
this on
the
her
safe
Google
is.
search history?
Yes, it was on her cell phone.
Jesus.
Yeah.
She's not very bright, is she?
No.
Okay.
So police find a camera in that closet when they're searching the house that belonged to Judy. However, photos on this camera were of the garage. So, yeah, Judy actually took photos and documented her own crime scene after the incident in the garage.
She isn't very bright at all.
I mean, she didn't look for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You set up your own camera to record, but you didn't realize that your mom had taken photographic evidence of a crime that happened to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the photos, it was evident that someone had been in the rafters.
Yeah.
And that the container of books had been pushed across the board, across the, plywood that's there, causing it to fall on Judy. Also, a 35-pound box is not just going to teeter and fall.
Yeah, move on its own.
Right. And nobody's going to notice for weeks on end that it's been up there and not Not that it needs to be shoved back.
Yeah.
Police also discovered that the .357 pistol was usually kept in Judy's truck, not in the house.
Oh.
It made no sense for it to be there in the closet. They learned that Tasha had driven the truck the day prior to the murder and found that the locked case that usually housed the gun was hidden behind the couch. After the house was searched, they found it.
Oh.
So that gun was not ever kept in the safe, in the closet. It was kept in a locked case in Judy's truck.
Okay.
So had no business being there. There were other guns in the safe that she kept unloaded. Well, she had them unloaded, but that one was loaded and in her truck, locked up.
Yeah.
So also while searching the house, a copy of a will, not her final will, was found in between the mattress and the frame of Tasha's bed. Presumably the copy she wanted Charles Adney to witness, in which Todd was cut out of everything and Tasha got everything.
How convenient.
Very much. So just days after being brought in for questioning, Tashia Stuart is arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of her mother, Judy Hebert.
It's this poor innocent girl who was just dealing with fire alarms.
Right.
And her mom charging her with an axe.
Right. Accusing her of stealing money.
This is injustice.
All she wanted was her birth certificate.
That's right.
So, of course, she pleads not guilty at the arraignment.
Of course.
Of course. She also goes through a medical evaluation at Eastern State Hospital in December of 2011 after claiming to be mentally incompetent.
Okay.
The psychologist who evaluates her, Dr. Randall Strandquist, completely sees through her game, and he states absolutely not. She can stand trial.
Yeah. He probably just walked in and was like, nope.
Yeah. So meanwhile, a surprising call comes in from California. Remember Todd?
Yeah.
Our friend Todd Stewart?
Yeah.
He had seen that Judy had been killed and that Tasha was arrested. And I'm not aware of the conversation that was between him and the police, but this puts him on the police radar. And when they begin looking into the garage incident, authorities begin to suspect he may have been involved in this entire plot.
Oh, wow.
So police are tracking his movements, and when they have enough probable cause, Todd is arrested on charges of attempted murder. He is brought back up to Washington, and he actually stands trial, and it takes place before Tasha's does. So after 7 months in jail, going through his trial, he is actually acquitted of all charges in September of 2012. They could not link him to it.
Okay.
Yeah. A month later, Tasha's trial begins on October 24th, 2012. A lot of information comes out during the trial. Her father, interestingly enough, as much as he says that he loves her and, that they treated her as their own daughter, he testifies against her, and he's happy to do so.
Wow.
Yeah. Her ex-husband, Todd, who's just been released and acquitted on charges, also takes the stand. He pleads the fifth more than he answers any questions, though, because he doesn't want to self-incriminate.
Yeah.
And there's a mention of other charges that I don't know what they are, maybe theft. He refuses to answer a lot of questions because there were charges that they could have charged him with that they didn't.
Yeah.
So the father of her little girl, Charles, also testifies against her. So she really doesn't have anybody in her corner at this point. Yeah. She's pretty much alienated everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the most damning bit of evidence actually came from her own daughter. Because she was and is still a minor, her identity has been kept from public records. I think at this point, though, she might be not a minor. She's probably of age, just barely.
Yeah.
The little girl did not actually testify in the trial. They had debated whether to do that or not. They did not want to further scar her, basically. Yeah. And the statement that she gave to investigators was, for a 7-year-old, very concise.
Yeah.
They were able to just use her statement in court.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was able to tell investigators a little bit more about what was in the safe and why her mom wanted it so badly.
A 7-year-old?
Yes.
Why does a 7-year-old know what's in the safe?
So according to her, the granddaughter had learned how to open and get into the safe because she was with her grandma so much.
Okay. Well, I guess.
Yeah. So she had observed what the code was, and she knew that her grandma kept large quantities of cash in that safe.
Yeah.
So somehow that information got said to Tasha, and the daughter showed her how to get into the safe.
Okay.
So the theory brought forth by the prosecutors was that there was all that money. Tasha wanted it. She finally gained access to the safe. Tasha took out all the money. Judy probably found out that morning.
Yeah.
And was going to call 911. It's assumed that her calling for the police was to either have Tasha removed from the house, possibly arrested. Only Tasha was not down with that plan, so she confronted her mother with the gun.
Okay. With her own gun.
With Judy's gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is what the jury believed to be correct. They convicted her of first-degree murder and attempted murder, and she was sentenced to 45 years in prison. She currently is sitting, awaiting, any appeals that she can make, which her first one was denied. She is in the Washington's Correction Center for Women in Gig Harbor.
Oh.
Yeah. I want to add, and this, first of all, this is going to sound flippant, but it's not. I had to laugh though. Tasha is currently listed on a website called Caged Ladies.
Oh no.
As a woman who's looking for a relationship and correspondence.
Yeah, I knew it.
Yeah. Reading her profile is, if you
Does
want
she
to
have
laugh.
a picture?
Oh yeah.
Can we post it?
I don't want to. I don't want to. I really don't want to post any of her pictures. And I'll get to that. So Tasha, of course, maintains that she is innocent and that she never would have wanted to hurt her mother. She still claims that Judy was on medication and an alcoholic, and that caused her to act erratically and violently, and that, her murder was done in self-defense.
Yeah.
I will mention that during the trial, the toxicology report was mentioned, and Judy was on medication. She was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of medications that she had taken that day that are questionable. But if you recall, she had mentioned to the neighbor back in February, before she was killed, she thought her medication was being tampered with.
Oh, yeah.
It most likely was. So according to Rolf, her ex-husband, Judy never would have misused any of her medication or alcohol.
Yeah.
That was not the type of person that she was.
Yeah.
So I listened to an interview that Tasha gave to a podcast by the name of Criminal Perspective. This was a year ago. She describes events from her childhood, like her birth mother taking off with her. And she states because of this, she has PTSD. She also claims to suffer from and is being treated for type 2 diabetes, type 1 bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, and dissociative disorder, as well as depression. I mean, I'm sure that she does have some mental illness.
Yeah.
I do. And I'm sure that the truth, is somewhere in between both sides of the story. Of course, they don't have the victim's story because she's not allowed to give it.
It's one-sided.
Right. Regardless of what the truth really is, like having the contradictory information actually confirms to me that Tasha had a difficult time in her life. That there's no argument with that, whether it was self-imposed or not.
Yeah.
If her parents were horrible parents or if she just did shitty things as a child, she didn't make it easier on herself or her life was hard. It just was.
Yeah.
Even if she's lying about everything that she says happened to her or, her parents are lying, it's the fact that someone created this alternative narrative to what actually happened.
Yeah.
And it tells me more about her than I think she really wants people to know. To be honest, I think she likes to create these stories. But if you are somebody that pays attention to what is not said and what is, what can be taken from information instead of what is specifically said for information, when you look at these things, she definitely, she portrays herself in a very interesting way. And this is my personal opinion. She sees herself as the victim and the savior. She's searching for the truth, but she can't admit to anything that's the truth.
Yeah.
She's both, she's just portraying herself in this way where she is not at wrong. She's not done anything wrong. Yeah. There's nothing in her life that she has done that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that, really just shows she's a manipulator.
Oh yeah.
And there's definitely I do believe serious mental illness issues there.
Yeah.
And I hope that she's getting treated for all that. I hope that that is something that she is getting, either psychological help, medication, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt in my mind that she committed this crime.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a no-brainer there.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. A woman who was injured could barely raise a hatchet, let alone attack somebody with it.
Or maybe her brain got damaged and she just had these on-off moments.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
But also, was she not justified in being upset? Somebody's stealing from you.
Yeah.
There was reportedly wads of rolled up money in that safe. It's gone.
That doesn't give her the right to come at someone with an axe, though.
No, I guess not. But
I doubt that's what happened.
I doubt that's what happened. Yeah. So as for her daughter, Tashia's daughter, she was in custody of her father, Charles. Like I said, I do believe at this time she would be an adult. She, was at the time in very close contact with her grandfather and his current wife. He had remarried.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little section from an article that I read where Charles mentioned how hard this was on her. She missed her grandmother very much. And she actually felt guilty because once, the investigators were asking her some of these questions, she recognized that if she hadn't showed her mom what was in the safe, like and opened the safe, maybe none of this would have happened. And I can't imagine how hard that would be for a little girl at 7 years old to feel that guilt.
Yeah.
So, it's very sad because she was a victim too.
Yeah.
Tashia is no longer allowed to have contact with her daughter due to a protective order that was put in place at her sentencing. I'm not sure what that means for her now that her daughter is an adult.
Yeah.
But there's been no attempt at contact made. Tashia no longer has contact with her father. Apparently she called him a few times at the beginning while she was in jail before she was convicted, and once after she got to prison asking for money, and he wouldn't give it to her. And so there's no contact there now.
You can't provide anything for her, so she doesn't want contact with you.
Right.
Why can't you just put money on my books, Dad?
Yeah. So Judy is still missed by her friends and family, and she's remembered to be a great hugger, and she was just a great friend to all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really sad. It's hard when it's, a family member that has done this to somebody. You're like, why the hell you got to do that to your family?
Yeah.
What? And your mother of all people, like
But
the person who loves you unconditionally, does anything for you.
Yeah.
Would give their left arm if they could, and yeah, not every mother's like this. And I would hope that the portrayal of Judy is that she was that mother. It doesn't deserve to be shot like that.
Yeah.
It's horrible. But there was just some justice,
Yeah.
Yeah. I also will say, going back to the photos, I recommend everybody go and Google her and look at her photos. Some of her trial photos had me fucked up.
Why?
And this is where, again, it sounds callous. Mental illness is a real thing.
Yeah.
So when you look at some of these photos from her, either she is presenting herself as she almost looks like her own lawyer, or there are some where she's sitting in her orange suit. She's got her arms all the way up in her sleeves. You can barely see her hands in her cuffs out her sleeves. She looks like she hasn't showered in weeks. And she just has this very wide, doe-eyed look on her face. Like she has no awareness of what's happening.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make fun of that, but it portrays two completely different people.
Different personalities.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also think it's a manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
she wanted to portray herself to look a certain way, and maybe she couldn't even help that she wanted to look that way.
Yeah, maybe it was ingrained, or maybe she, wasn't even an act. She did it so many times that it was just second nature then.
I do think that she's just a very deceptive person. She's very manipulative.
Yeah.
And again, mental illness shows itself in different ways with everybody. I can't say that she's choosing to do that. I'm just saying that is how she is portrayed. Yeah. That's how she's portraying herself.
Yeah.
Is that it's, it's all about her wanting to make sure you see her as she wants you to see her, and and believing what she wants you to believe. So, yeah, I recommend everybody go do that. I just don't want to post that and make it seem negative for everybody. That's all. Those are my perspective on it. I'm curious to know what anybody else's perspective would be on those photos. So yeah, it's interesting. It's just really sad because mental illness is really, it ravages people.
Yeah.
And like I said, I hope she's getting the help that she deserves and she needs. It doesn't bring Judy back. It doesn't change anything for anybody. The loss is still there, but yeah, it's everybody deserves mental health, like good access to mental health help. So, all right, that's what we got. It was just a weird one-off case that I came across, and I was like, this crazy lady, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all we got this win. Hope everybody is well. And that's it.
I do want to give a shout out to my friend Mike. He had a heart attack this week, but he is feeling better.
Yes, Mike.
He's in ICU. Get better, Mike.
Is he home yet? No, he's still in ICU.
Not that I know. He was in ICU. He said he's going to be there. Or he just got out of ICU. He's going to be at least there for another couple of days. So.
All right. Well, please take care of yourself, Mike, and hope you're better.
Yay, Mike.
Yay, Mike. All right, guys. Well, everybody, please stay safe. Take care of one another. You never know the shit people are going through, so be kind. And as always, stay out of the fucking woods.
Stay out of the woods.
Bye, guys.
Bye.